Welcome, everybody. We are doing another episode of the Indie Reads Aloud podcast. I love this program. It makes me so happy. You all have been here for over 350 episodes now. You guys know I'm just a little kid waiting for people to read out loud. So this is me sitting on my virtual carpet in front of the rocking chair waiting. Today, Nikki Mitchell is going to read for us. I'm so excited to meet you as a Michigan author. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to meet you as well.
This is going to be so much fun because you got dragons
A
and you're
dragon.
from Michigan, and I just don't see how this can be a bad episode. I mean, seriously.
Right?
So, Nikki and I get to meet in the green room, but you folks haven't really learned about her yet because she's brand new. So I'm going to tell you about her. Nikki Mitchell is the award-winning American author of the middle grade Portal Fantasy trilogy, Eleanor Mason's Literary Adventures, and the Magic Shoebox Adventures, which is what she's going to read from today. She's a native of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and lives there with her husband, 2 children, 2 rabbits, 3 cats, and a dog. Like, it's a small zoo. She is a proud member of the Upper Peninsula Publishers and Authors Association and is a mom of a child with ADHD and sensory processing disorder. She continues to write fantasy tales with disabled characters and characters with ADHD, anxiety, and autism because who doesn't love inclusion in literature? I am so excited to meet you because I love people who specifically write books for an audience that usually doesn't get targeted. So I'm really, really super excited to meet you. So tell me just a little bit about how you decided to write about dragons. Why dragons rather than alligators, for instance?
um, Actually, my son told me that my first set of books was too girly, probably because it's his sister's silhouette on the covers, and that my books needed dragons. So this is his dragon book.
Well, kids are the experts on what kind of books they need. So
They absolutely are. So this one is 100% for Everett. That's one of the biggest reasons it has the inclusion as well, because he's the one that has a sensory processing disorder and he's on the autism spectrum. And I wanted a book that he could access.
very cool. So are your dragons European style dragons or Far East style dragons?
They are none of the above. They are
So describe your dragons to us then.
okay, so these are seasoned dragons. And they're from a Viking village, but they control the seasons. So the season, there's 4 dragons, they're all siblings, and each one controls a season. There's winter, summer, spring, and autumn. And they're colored to match their seasons. And they control the weather in all of the realms. So when winter's in there, it's winter. When spring comes and takes over the orb for winter, it becomes spring. And they're having a spat in Season of Dragons, and so the weather is completely out of control.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Because they're siblings who fight just like Ichabod's siblings he doesn't necessarily get along with. So it mirrors Ichabod's home life. And then there's a grandma dragon. Her name is Gran, and she's my favorite. She came from a time when there was only one season dragon. And so she represented all of the seasons, and then the magic started to dissipate because the humans stopped believing as much as they did, and then the seasons had to be broken into 4 dragons. And so she's kind of a shunned grandma dragon, and she found her happiness in retirement. She cross-country skis and she just has a good time.
Okay, all right, that's just a great visual, a dragon on skis. I just think that's spectacular. I like it. I really like that a lot. I am tremendously excited to hear you read from this book. I can already tell it's going to be added to my TBR because dragons. So,
Right.
but the idea that you created this different elements for them to tap into, I think is a really unique idea. I really love that. So, I understand you're going to read a couple little sections, not necessarily full chapters.
Yep, and these chapters, because it's written for kids with ADHD and they might have low attention spans, my chapters are usually only 2 to 3 pages long, and that's it, so that they can feel a sense of accomplishment.
That's fantastic.
But I'm going to start with chapter 1 so that I can introduce Ichabod, my
Okay.
main character, and then I'm going to read. So chapter 1 starts when he's at home, and then I'm going to read 2 short chapters from in the middle where he is meeting the dragons for the first time. So
Fantastic. All right. I'm gonna get ready. I've got my listening ears on. Thank
all
you so much again for being here. When you are ready, please take the microphone and read aloud.
right. Chapter 1, A Missing Treasure Box. Ichabod was one of 6 children, of which he fell in the middle. His older brothers were all athletic, and the hallways were filled with their medals. His younger sisters, Penelope and Gertrude, were star dancers at the ballet school. Their fancy photos hung in the entry to the house. Ichabod was different, though. He didn't have trophies that his parents were proud of. In fact, they didn't seem to notice Ichabod at all. That's not to say that Ichabod was boring, because that would be a very incorrect statement. Ichabod was an adventurer. He filled his days with high sea rescue missions, pirate battles, and treasure hunts to the deepest, darkest caves. He did have trophies, but they were his own. He kept them hidden in an old, tattered shoebox, in a place where no one would dare to look, under his bed. Ichabod knew that he had enough hidden away for his Explorer Days presentation, the one he hadn't even thought about until that morning. It was for his science class, and he had collected many cool rocks that would fit the assignment. His plan was to throw a few things into his backpack and be on his way. After rolling out of bed that Friday morning and throwing on whatever clothes he found on top of his laundry basket, he dropped down onto his stomach and lifted the bed skirt. The space where the shoebox normally sat was empty. Ichabod reached under the bed and flailed his arms, hoping to catch the box. Maybe his cat Moby had pushed it farther back. Nothing. Panic seeped into Ichabod, and his brain started to rush. His stomach felt sour, and he ran out of his bedroom to the next room, the girls. He pounded on the door. I know you took it, you thieves. Give it back. He pounded on the door until it swung open. Standing in the doorway were 2 identical girls, both wearing frilly dresses and ugly bows in their high ponytails. Stole what? Penelope asked. You don't even have anything to steal, the other said with a scowl on her face. The shoebox under my bed? Ichabod crossed his arms. I wouldn't even step foot in your room. You can smell it from the hallway. Ichabod's face grew red, and he ran down the halls, pounding on each door. Everyone said the same thing. They didn't even know Ichabod had anything worth stealing. Defeated, he sulked down the stairs and plopped down at the breakfast table. His dad sat there with a newspaper, hiding his face, and a grapefruit slice on a plate in front of him. A cup of black coffee steamed next to it. Ichabod's mother turned around from the stove and put a plate of pancakes and sausage links in front of him. What's wrong, Ichabod? And what was all that pounding upstairs? You haven't let another feral animal into the house, have you? No, and that was one time. Ichabod pushed his sausage around with his fork. My box is missing. Box? What are you talking about? His mother asked. It was a shoebox of treasures I had hidden in my room. Oh, that nasty thing. I threw that out last week when I cleaned your room. His mom turned back to the stove to flip more pancakes. Mom, that's where all my treasures were. Well, I'd hardly call a handful of dirty rocks, an old tennis shoe, and plastic coins treasure, dear. Ichabod felt sick. He had nothing for his presentation, and now all his treasures from his grand adventures were mixed in with dirty diapers and banana peels. He got up from the table without taking a single bite, swung his backpack over his shoulder, double-checked that he had his bouncy ball in his pocket, and headed toward the door. He looked back to see if anyone would try to stop him, but his parents didn't even notice he was gone. So that's chapter 1. And then he finds a dragon egg next to the stop sign at his bus stop. And when he pulls it out of his bag for his presentation, he lands in a Viking village called Hesir. And from there, he finds out that he needs to return the dragon egg. So he and a newfound friend, Ingrid, try to sail to the mountain of Drakor where the dragons live. But there's a mist who has a personality, and the mist keeps rerouting them back to an island because they're not supposed to just walk up the island or up the mountains. So I'm going to read from chapter 9, where they finally reach the base of the mountain. So chapter 9, the mountains of Drakor. Ichabod felt a little ping of fear hit when Ingrid pointed out the base of the mountain. After how difficult it had been to even find the place, he wasn't sure if he wanted to meet what lived up there. Ingrid guided the boat toward what the map had labeled as an invisible landing. Do you think our boat will still be here when we get back? Ichabod asked. Honestly, I'm not even sure we will still be here after this. What's our escape plan if everything goes bad? Run, Ingrid said. All right, we are. A huge gust of wind blew the apple blossoms off the boat, revealing them to the mist. The boat started to pull away from the dock. Ichabod tightened his grip on the knot that secured them to the dock, but the wind proved to be much stronger than him. Quick, Ichabod, jump onto the ground. Go up the mountain. But what about you? I'll be fine. Just fix this, she yelled, pushing the hair out of her face. But I can't do this without you. It'll be fine, I promise, Ingrid shouted, but the promise felt a little weak. Still, Ichabod did as he was told and jumped. He couldn't see what he was jumping onto because the fog was so thick. He heard the rope snap, Ingrid shout, and then silence. He tried to look around to see his surroundings, but he was surrounded by white fog. Thanks a lot, Mist, he said, groping around to find something to guide him. Ichabod heard a voice behind him, but when he turned around, there was nothing. Ingrid? Nothing. Oh, you must talk too, hey, Mist? Ichabod sneered. After a couple minutes of walking blindly, Ichabod noticed the mist starting to clear. He could barely make out the base of the mountain and a little bit of the path he had been walking on. When the fog finally cleared all the way, Ichabod gasped. He was walking on a ledge no bigger than the balance beam gymnasts walk on, and the crashing waves were right below him, followed by some awfully sharp rocks. Ichabod kept walking, although it felt like he was walking in circles. He kept one hand on the mountain base the whole time because everything was slippery, and his foot had slipped on the edge a few times already. Finally, Ichabod found a small cove and decided to rest for a moment and gear up for the climb. I hope there are stairs, he joked to himself, knowing that he would have to climb the mountain alone with no ropes or hooks. The ropes and hooks were with Ingrid. Ingrid, he needed his new friend. Ichabod's stomach lurched. But you came here on your very own, mind you. What? Ichabod twisted around. He still couldn't see anyone, but the whisper was there. Ingrid, if this is you, it isn't funny. You need to come out now. I am not Ingrid. Your friend is back at the island by now, I'm sure. Then who are you, and why won't you show yourself? Ichabod was trembling. He backed up as far against the rock as he could. He reached into his pocket and desperately rubbed his lucky coin, hoping for some bravery. I have shown myself this whole time. You've seen me. You've yelled at me. Why have you come? I haven't seen anyone since I got here, he said. Who are you? I won't tell you why I've come if you won't show yourself. He tried to make his voice sound brave, but it crackled as it came out of his mouth. The fog grew thick again, so thick that Ichabod struggled to breathe. Do you see me now? Mist? Ichabod whispered. He didn't have enough breath to say it loudly. The fog dissipated again. Why have you come? I can't trust you. You have no choice if you want to make it any further. I am the guide to whomever steps foot in this territory. I guided you back to the island because I knew you were clearly lost. I tried to guide you away again, but you persisted. Ichabod folded his arms across his chest. He had been prepared to deal with fire-breathing dragons on this trip, but definitely not a talking fog machine. I won't tell you why I'm here until you promise me that Ingrid is safe. Ah, stubborn one, just like the last one. This shall be fun. I wouldn't call it fun, Ichabod muttered. Your friend is safe on the island. That's as far as I can guide. If she stayed or made it back home, I do not know. Oh, Ingrid won't go back home. She'll be back at it. I'm sure she's covering the boat again. Why do you think tricking me is wise? Because you won't let us travel to the mountain any other way. You are defying the laws of this world, and they will not be happy. Yeah, well, we're not happy that all the seasons are messed up. Would you like to tell me more about that? Ichabod couldn't believe he was talking to the weather. I do not discuss the business of my masters. Of course not. Well, are you going to guide me up this mountain then? Because I'm kind of on a time restraint. Time stands still here, but yes, I'll guide you. I first must ask where it is you want to go. Take me to the dragon's lair, please. I have something that belongs to them. Silly mortal. What is that supposed to mean? Ichabod barked back. Follow me, please. A thick ball of fog started floating just in front of the path. This way will just take us in circles, Ichabod said. It would only take you in circles. I know where I'm going. Ichabod stuck his tongue out at the fog ball. The mist must have seen it because it started to move faster. Hey, wait! Ichabod started to pick up the pace while still being careful not to slip. I thought you said you didn't have all day. The big ball of fog led Ichabod up a winding path. While he was happy that he didn't have to actually climb the side of the mountain, the path remained very slippery, and he had a hard time keeping up. For most of the climb, Ichabod focused on staring at the mist. He knew that with his luck, he would look down for a second, and it would disappear and leave him on his own. But for a second, he did let his eyes wander, and the sight was incredibly breathtaking. The view reminded him a little of when he had walked out on the pier toward the lighthouse in the harbor, but this was so much grander. The water was an icy green blue, and the waves brought a foam to the shore that reminded him of his mother's homemade meringue. He took a breath, and salty air filled his lungs. He saw that the ocean was amazing, but dangerously so. When he caught himself staring too long, he snapped himself out of it and looked at the fog. Apparently, the fog was nice sometimes because it had slowed to wait for him. I told you to keep up. I'm sorry, everything is just so pretty. It won't be pretty when the weather changes again. Why can't you talk about the dragons? Ichabod asked. I told you I don't talk about my masters. But why? Because it is the law of the universe. Then again, you don't seem to care much for those laws. I don't know the laws. You read the books, you know the laws. I didn't understand them all. Some of the text was in a different language. What world are you from? That is the only language your human folk understand. Wisconsin. And if that's the case, why can I understand you? What language are you speaking now? I'm all in your head. I don't actually talk. I take over minds. That's not creepy at all, Ichabod said sarcastically. You're the one who insisted on coming. How much longer? Nothing. The fog started to get really thin, and Ichabod was worried that he had annoyed the fog one too many times, and it had left him. But then he looked around and realized that he was at the top, and right in front of him was the entrance to a very large dark cave. Excuse me, mist? Ichabod asked. Nothing. Is this where I'm supposed to go? How will I see? Open your eyes, dummy. Ichabod let out a loud sigh and took a few steps into the cave. It stayed dark, so Ichabod found the edge of a wall and used it to guide him. The mist was no longer anywhere in sight, but Ichabod swore that if he ended up back on that island, he would be furious and the mist would hear all about it once he got back to the dock. Ichabod could hear the echo of different voices. They were all talking over each other like one would do in an argument. He was surprised at how normal the voices sounded, especially for dragons. The egg in his backpack grew heavy, and fear gripped Ichabod. He knew he had to return it, but he was terrified as to what they would do with him once he gave it back. Ichabod wanted nothing more than to be at home listening to his sisters sing in the shower or his brothers talk about their boring track meets. He'd even eat his mom's tuna fish casserole if it meant not having to face these dragons. Ichabod reached for his coin again. He knew returning the egg was the right thing to do, and hopefully the dragons would be thankful. He shook any other thoughts from his head and crept through the cave. He could feel the walls starting to shrink into a deep tunnel. The floor was slippery, and Ichabod had to brace himself on both sides of the cave walls in order to keep going. Open your eyes, dummy, he heard again. My eyes are open, he whispered, holding his backpack straps tightly. Not really, no they're not. I don't know what you mean, but I'm kind of busy trying not to fall on my butt right now. That would be fun to watch. Did you come to help or hinder me? Neither. But before you hit the next part, you will need to open your eyes. Ichabod clapped his hands over his ears, and by doing so, lost his balance and fell. The tunnel had turned into what reminded him of the giant metal slide at the local playground. He couldn't stop. The wetness of the floor, the momentum he had built, kept him heading straight for, well, he didn't know because he couldn't see anything. In a panic, he snapped his eyes shut as hard as possible and tried to think. His stomach turned. You really don't listen, do you? Not right now. Go away. Ichabod just thought the words this time because he was too sick to say it aloud. If you're sure, but you really should open your eyes. Can you tell me why? Nothing. Ichabod still didn't know what the stupid fog meant, but he thought for a second and told himself to open his eyes, and he was shocked when they snapped back open. He could see perfectly clear now. The tunnel walls were green, black, and slimy. While he felt incredibly thankful that he could see where he was, he still felt like he was going to puke. Ichabod could see a light at the end, and he was heading there quickly. Afraid of what was waiting for him at the bottom, he tried to slow himself to no avail. With a quick plop, Ichabod landed right in the center of a stone room. Just across the room, 4 large dragons were arguing and didn't even notice Ichabod's presence. Chapter 10, Dragon Cave. Ichabod couldn't believe that he was in a cave with 4 dragons and they hadn't even noticed him slide in. He stood up and tried to brush the slime off his pants. Once that proved unsuccessful, he looked back at the dragons. They looked exactly like the illustration in the book, but much bigger and brighter in color. Ichabod saw the amethyst and pink ones shouting at each other, and the burnt orange one trying to break them up. The white one, however, was sound asleep in the corner. He wondered how he could sleep with all the noise. The two dragons carried on in a language Ichabod couldn't understand. He looked around at the rest of the cave and saw the giant orb sitting on a pedestal near the white dragon. The rest of the cave was pretty empty. Without thinking, Ichabod took a step forward and accidentally kicked a pebble, sending it right to the dragons. 3 dragons turned their heads at once and looked directly at Ichabod. The pink and purple dragons, which Ichabod guessed were spring and summer, had eyes filled with fire. The orange one, which Ichabod decided to call autumn, came rushing toward him, yelling in its language. Oh, I'm sorry. I must have taken the wrong turn. So very sorry. He scrambled toward the tunnel, but the white dragon blocked it with a yawn. Spring and summer started hissing in his direction, then back at each other. Ichabod felt fear rise in his throat. I told you not to come. Yeah, but I'm here now. Help. I can translate. Oh, good. Tell them not to eat me. Is that what you want your first words to be to 4 dragons who could burn you to a crisp in a second? Actually, yes, Ichabod said, shaking. It's not proper, but if you insist. Ichabod couldn't hear anything, so he assumed the mist was speaking to the dragons in their mind as well. They want to eat you. No, they don't. What did they say? That you are not welcome here? Tell them that I have something that belongs to them. Oh, and to fix the seasons because everything is messed up. They said to go away and that no mortal could have anything that belongs to them. Ichabod sighed. He could really use Ingrid right now. Tell them I said please, and I have an egg. There was a pause. The dragons looked at each other and back at Ichabod. Why are they staring at me? Because you're covered in slime. Not because I have a dragon egg in my backpack right now? I didn't tell them that. Why not? Because they will eat you for sure. You were awfully brave bringing that egg up here, but right now my masters are not in the mood. Why not? Because of the seasons. Won't returning the egg fix the seasons? What if that's what they're fighting over? Maybe one thinks the other stole it. That's not what they're fighting over. If I tell them about the egg, they will eat you and the weather will still be a mess. Would you like me to do it anyway? Ichabod looked at Winter and started speaking in English, hoping that by some magic he would understand him. The dragon stared at him for a while and then seemed to get bored. He went back over to his spot, curled up, and dozed off. Oh, well, that was helpful, Ichabod muttered. At least he didn't eat you. Hush. Ichabod was a little afraid of spring and summer, and he didn't fully trust the mist yet, so he tried the same tactic with autumn. His eyes grew hot. You've done it now. Done what? Insulted him, and he's the nice one. How? By addressing a dragon without the proper paperwork. Seriously? Yeah, I think you should leave now. They won't let me. I tried that when they first saw me. Oh, well, your dinner. Can you talk to him, please? Tell him to talk to the other dragons. He'll eat me. Ichabod put his hands on his hips and shot a dirty look to the fog. Fine. Please hold. Ichabod stood very still as he didn't want to break any more rules. At first he thought the rules could be bent a little, but he understood now they couldn't, at least not at a human level. He said I could tell you. Spring and summer are fighting. They want to control the orb for all seasons. While summer thinks she should be spring and summer, and spring wants all 4, just like her grandmother. Wait, there was a grandmother? Yes, long ago one dragon controlled the seasons of the world, the dragon of the orb. She stayed and guarded the orb, and the seasons passed on the way they were intended to. It was the law of the world. That dragon had the power to control life, as life would only grow and flourish in certain times. If she saw that the world mistreated that life, she would extend the harsh climates until they were thankful and treasured the life of spring and summer. This is how it worked. It passed on from dragon to dragon until the magic and the thankfulness seemed to fade. Humans were controlling so much, and the magic used to keep the orb going and give the dragon her power faded. There wasn't enough magic to fill one dragon. Instead, the magic was broken into 4 clans, thus 4 seasons. Each dragon has enough magic to sustain the season for its intended days. Winter will come here and sleep, and then spring will come and take his place. This is the new law. Okay, so if this is the law, what's the problem? Well, with this new batch of dragons from the clans, some want more control, others want it to go back to before. But I thought there wasn't enough magic. There is not, but I believe Summer wants to make the humans thankful again by stirring up this trouble. If they show thanks to the dragons, the magic will get stronger. So the kids don't want to share their ball? You are very lucky they cannot understand what you are saying. You'd be toast for sure. What do we do now? My suggestion, find Grandma. Wait, if you knew all this before, why didn't you tell me? I do not share the business of my masters. Will you help me find her? The mist paused, and Ichabod saw Autumn shake his head in disagreement. I cannot. I can only leave you with these parting words. Keep climbing. Good luck with your quest, boy from Wisconsin.
Very good. Yeah. I I I'm hooked. I'm absolutely hooked. I love the snark coming out of Ichabod and the Mist. The way they speak to each other has got me giggling. So, congratulations.
Thank
Very well
you.
done. What was the hardest part of writing this book for you?
Um, Honestly, it was the mist, because I wanted the mist to take on its own personality, and writing a character that's literally a ball of fog, was tricky. And the mist in the book is when he speaks, it's all in italics because it's in Ichabod's mind, but I
Sure.
wanted it to mirror intrusive thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why instead of speaking like another character would, it's all in Ichabod's head. And
So it
later
comes
on,
out as Ichabod Snark.
yep.
Yeah.
Um, and so it mirrors the intrusive thoughts that a lot of kids have too, and I think as adults we don't recognize that the kids have these, and it's like a war where you're like, well, I need to get this done, but you're gonna fail at this. And so I wanted it to mirror that. And there's a spot towards the end when Ichabod is with Gran where she basically says that you can't trust the mist, that he's not trustworthy, he's a phony, and it's kind
I
of a
I
nod
I
to.
love this because as a writer, the Mist really is imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
And I love how you're making that concept accessible to kids in a way that they can understand it.
Right.
I just love that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done. I am super excited about having you come back. Will you come back on the program and read from your other books?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love that. Thank you so much for your time today, Nikki.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of
Before
fun.
you go, when's the next book in this series coming out?
It's coming out in 2025. I don't have
Okay.
it's gonna come out on a Friday the 13th. I just haven't planned which one yet.
Okay.
Because it's
Cool.
it's about superstitious pirates. Ichabod finds a hidden pirate ship in the second one. So we'll get Ichabod back, but he's gonna be in a completely different realm with very superstitious pirates. So I figured it
Very
was fun to
fun.
have it on a Friday the 13th.
That's that's wonderful. I will look for that.
Okay,
Thank you so much again for your
thank
time. This was
you.
just a pure delight to meet you.